Craig, you doing something fancy? You got a picture on one box and a sound in another.
Can you hear me, Stephen?
Yeah, I can.
We have you loud and clear.
Can you hear us? That's the question.
Yeah, you're making us seasick.
All right.
Okay, guys, it's 6:30.
Yep, I got 6:30. You
Yep.
ready to go, Stephen?
Yeah, I think we've got everybody who we were going to have tonight, so away we go.
Okay, I'd like to call the Harbor Commission meeting to order. First one in 2021. Happy New Year to everybody. Could I have a roll call, please?
Sure, and I'm going to take you on the order I see on my screen here. Commissioner Cruzan,
Present.
Commissioner Callahan,
Present?
Commissioner Carlson,
Present?
Commissioner Kilroy,
Here.
Commissioner Bauer,
Here.
Chair Light.
Present.
And we know that Commissioner Walters is not going to be joining us this evening, so he sent a note in advance.
Okay. Roger, would you mind leading us in the pledge to the flag?
Be honored. Repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the
United
United
States
States of America and to the republic for which it
for which it
stands,
stands,
One
one
nation.
nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For all.
Thank you. Tough to tell who was leading there. I think some got ahead of you.
Yeah, that echo gets me.
Okay, let's see. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the order of the agenda.
So moved. Second?
Okay, anybody opposed? Okay. So we'll go in the order that the agenda has been.
But we need a roll call for a vote for everything, don't we?
Can't we just raise our hands?
Now, if there's no objections, so the easy ones, I'm just going to call if there's any objections, and we'll take it that way.
Works for me.
Okay. Let's see. I didn't see any blue folder items. Did anything get added since I looked?
No, that's correct. There are no blue folder items for tonight.
Okay, moving on to the consent calendar. Let's see. We've got the affidavit of posting and the minutes. Vicky?
I have a correction on the October 27th minutes.
Okay, so we'll pull that. Does anybody else want to pull anything? Okay, does any member of the public have a comment on the approval of affidavit since we're pulling the other one? Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the affidavit of posting.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, anybody opposed? Okay, let's talk about the excluded item, the minutes. Vicky, I'll give you the floor.
Okay, on page 4 of the minutes from October 27th, which is page 16, I believe, in your packet, it says Commissioner Callahan questioned why there will be dredging in the harbor. Nah, I know why there's dredging in the harbor. What I asked was, why are they dumping so close to the entrance of the harbor?
Okay, I see where that comment is. Okay,
Second paragraph.
gotcha. Why so close to?
Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with that clarification. Anybody else have comments on that clarification? Okay, so Stephen, I imagine you guys will take care of that?
We will. So we'll correct that if you'd like to entertain a motion. And don't forget, there are two sets of minutes. There's actually October 12th and October 27th.
Yeah, I'm gonna get all the changes and then we'll do a motion to.
Got it.
Okay, so any other corrections to either of the minutes? Vicky, it looked like you wanted to say something else.
No, I'm fine.
Okay, anybody else on any of the minutes? Okay, do we have to take public comment on that?
You did pull the item. There's no members of the public in attendance right now, so I don't think you have any public comment. And let me just check your e-comments for you. I'll refresh that page. Sorry, you all froze on my screen for a second there. So if you said something, I may have missed you.
No, we all did that. We coordinated and all froze.
Okay.
Didn't like pull that up.
So were the minutes approved?
Well, we're just, so there's no e-commerce, no e-comments?
No comment, and no, there's no one in our waiting room for public comment. So
Okay. So I'll tend to entertain a motion to incorporate Vicky's clarification.
Motion to approve the minutes of October 12th and October 27th with corrections.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Second.
Okay, Tom seconded. Anybody opposed? Okay. Let's move on to the next item. Let's see. Time for public participation on non-agenda items. H1, any e-comments or emails?
we have no one in your waiting room for comments. I will refresh the e-comment page. And we do not have any e-comments for public participation on non-agenda items.
And no emails?
And no emails.
Okay.
No emails either.
Okay, we show no items continued from previous agendas, but Roger and our subcommittee did owe a letter to the council regarding the dredging, and we're remiss on getting that out. So can we add that to the next agenda, the next meeting we have?
Sure,
Stephen?
absolutely. Yeah, we'll take we have the copy of the letter. You're talking about the letter that was sent to the Army Corps, correct?
Well, there was two. We were supposed to generate a letter to the Corps and then one to the council, and we never brought back the one to the council.
Okay. So if you generate that letter and send it to me between now and the next meeting, we can add that to the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
And I think what we'll probably do, if it's okay with you, Chair Light, is we'll go ahead and insert a copy of the letter that also went to the Army Corps, just so all the commissioners have a copy of that as well.
Okay, yep. Appreciate that. Let's go to item J, items for discussion prior to action. Item J1, the quarterly public safety report.
Great. So this is your quarterly public safety report, and we have various public safety folks who are here this evening. I think what we'll do is we'll start maybe with Chief Metzger and let the chief go first. And then we have Mario and Jeff from the PD department, so they can go second. And this is their quarterly report and an opportunity for you to ask any questions that you may have of them regarding activities in the harbor. So Chief Metzger, if you'd like to go first.
Good evening, everybody, and Happy New Year to each and every one of you.
Happy New Year.
Well, hopefully we turn around a different kind of year for 2021. So I'm here to give you the last quarter report for Harbor Patrol with Fire Department. And as I typically do, I do compare last year's stats with this year's stats. And if for no other reason than just get a sense of how things are moving around, you have access, I believe, to the 2019 stats if you are forwarded the entire spreadsheet. But if you're not, please let Mr. Proud know, and I can make sure you get copies of all that data if you have any curiosity in digesting that. But for the moment, in comparing 2020 year-end totals with 2019, for certain specific categories, we've highlighted increases in a category that really breaks my heart. The first is sea life disposal. We've actually had an increase of 42% in instances where we've had to undergo that responsibility. Year-end total is 44. Last year it was 31. We've had an increase of 35% in our responses to Maydays, increasing from 167 to 225.
Wow.
Yep. We've had an increase in are SUP-related swimming incidents of 134%. So that's gone up appreciably from 73 to 171. So mind you, that's for the year. And but that's something we had hoped we were getting a better handle on. And then this just, for a variety of reasons, I'm not sure I understand them, we're really seeing a serious increase there. And then the last one that I'll highlight is an increase of 118% in our termination criteria of PFDs, where we've had to terminate a vessel's voyage because of an inadequate PFD complement on board. And that's from, it went from 43 last year to 94 instances this year. Year round, though, our total number of enforcement activities and other activities for Harbor Patrol has actually decreased by 15%, from 3,541 to 3,015. Now, notable instances for the last 3 months, obviously, lobster season started in October. There was a fair amount of additional traffic in the harbor as a consequence of that. That resulted in increased navigation hazards, and as Harbor Patrol was out engaging in public contact, advising of rules and regulations, and so forth. You're going to hear that I have not mentioned thus far issuance of citations, and there's a reason for that. Also in October, we worked with LA County Fire Baywatch to remove a boat off of the breakwall, as well as another boat fire that occurred mid-channel. In November, we assisted multiple agencies in the search for a missing swimmer off of PV. Participated in Moonstone Park, a landing zone exercise with Coast Guard and other outside agencies. And then in December, nothing remarkable to report. I mentioned that there's you won't see that we are doing citation enforcement activity. I think you all probably know what that situation's about, but to date, Harbor Patrol, which had previously been identified as not meeting the criteria for peace officer status by the city attorney, has not, the city charter, retained citation authority. We're not peace officers, nor do we have, under the charter, specific authority to issue citations. Apparently, we're working on that. I had put in a request to the city attorney's office to understand specifically what we need to do to get that. And he had explained in the moment that that's merely a change to the charter that will enable us to do that. But the entity that provides the language for that, the city attorney's office, has not yet been able to produce that due to a large workload of higher priority items. So that's where that stands right now. Harbor Patrol is an advisory entity on the water, but we don't have much in the way of enforcement authority unless we engage PD. So with that, this concludes my report, but I will take any questions you might have.
Okay, I see a couple hands up, but I'm gonna take my privilege and go first.
Sure.
Let's see. So I'm not surprised at the swimming numbers. I think a lot of people, because of COVID, went out and paddleboarded, and that very, very shallow area is just beckons people to jump off their boards and play around. I've noticed people going in west of the yacht club right before the break wall and just walking in and walking over to the shallow area or taking their dogs in. So I'm not surprised that increased. Likewise, I'm not sure I'm surprised on the PFDs on the SUPs. Was it the terminations? Were they primarily SUPs or were they boats, or you don't have enough to?
I honestly don't have any breakdown of that data beyond that, but I could try to determine that for the next meeting if that would be helpful.
Yeah, I just sense there's a lot of people who are on the water who've not been on the water a lot with COVID, and so I'm not surprised that came up. The boat, you said there was a boat fire mid-channel. You mean in the channel in the harbor or mid-channel between us and Catalina?
I was in the impression that it was actually here in King Harbor.
Wow. Okay. And the citations, that seems odd to me. Has the Harbor Patrol never in the history of the Harbor Patrol issued citations?
No, that's not true. We actually, prior to the determination that our people didn't qualify for peace officer status, they had the authority to issue citations because they were considered peace officers. But when the city attorney determined, as a consequence of a legal ruling that was made involving another Harbor Patrol entity, I believe up in Santa Barbara, there was a feeling that we needed to kind of withdraw from the peace officer business and focus our efforts on fire and rescue capabilities, which is why we expanded our paramedic program onto the water. But there is still a need for us to have at least citation authority. We don't have that.
Okay, and is it only, Director Proud, is it only the city attorney allowed to write charter changes for the city?
Well, any of that work would flow through their office. So, I'm not aware of anybody else in the city that would take on such a responsibility. And typically they'll either do that as an in-house action, or sometimes they'll utilize outside counsel to do that work. I'm not sure exactly on this particular matter if they're doing that in-house or not.
Okay, and because it's a charter change, it has to go to a vote of the people. So we're quite a ways away from being able to let the Harbor Patrol make citations. Is that correct?
Well, I have not been given any update in terms of progress, and in spite of requesting that, so it's just going to take a little bit more than what if we're going to fast track this in any way, or if there's a need to fast track it. It has not come to fruition in any kind of expedient way.
But it does have to go to a vote of the people, correct? Because it's a charter change, right?
Well, actually, I stand corrected. It's a municipal code change.
Ah, okay.
That's
Yeah,
different.
it's my bad. I apologize. Municipal code change. That language still comes typically through the city attorney's office. May not involve a charter change. But,
That's more reassuring because it takes forever to get something on the ballot. Okay, let's see. I can't see who put their hand up first, so I'm just going to.
Roger.
Okay, Roger, you have the floor.
Sure, thanks. Chief, thanks for the comment. One comment on PFDs. I've made this comment in the past. One time I went stand-up paddleboarding in our harbor with friends from another harbor, and they didn't even bring PFDs with them. They didn't know they had to. So I think our harbor does a better job of enforcing this. And as people said, it may be, people coming from other places, people unused to it. So, I was pretty surprised that these guys showed up without PFDs. So, it could be visitors. So thanks for the training. And something we mentioned, I think at the last safety meeting, this was when we put the new showers in at the hand launch. I had the question of, should we put up signage there? Because I know we have signage around the harbor. I went by and checked, and there is a sign basically still at the hand launch. It's not that close to the shower. It's kind of on the north side of the hand launch, but
Yeah.
you know, I think we're covered. I think we're, you know, as good on signs as we're going to be. And there are other signs around the area. There's one near the Battle House. So,
Yep.
you know, we do have signs up around the harbor. I don't know if those are new or what, but you know,
Mm-mm.
it looks good.
They're up, down.
Yeah. And then my last question, kind of same question as ever. How's staffing? I know we have a new budget. I know you have COVID. You know, has your coverage been good? You happy with the support you're getting from council on your staffing?
Our staffing is fine. The only reason why we are down a number of positions, but that has nothing to do with the support of council and everything to do with our ability to push through recruitment and subsequent hiring classes. We have no restrictions on our ability to hire. The process is just what's taking the time right now. So as soon as we think we are gonna have all of that buttoned up by mid-year to third quarter.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Is that it, Roger? Okay, Vicky?
Yeah, just a quick comment. Thank you very much for the synopsis, the significant events of 2020. It's really nice to have it all in a nice, concise little look back without having to go back through all of the reports. And yes, I understand why October had so many more of everything because it was hot. People were looking for things to do with families to get away from the heat, things that they could do as a family. And I think we're still, even now it's cold weather, we're still going to see a lot of activity down at the harbor. You know, people can't go to the movies, they can't go out to dinner, so the beach is the next logical step. So thank you for all you do. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Bauer, I see your hand is up.
Yes, just real quick. Thank you so much for that report. It was wonderful. I'm curious about the sea life disposal. You said that went up by 42%. What drove that?
That's a great question. Typically that's going to be something that's large enough that doesn't readily self-resolve. Usually something like a dead sea lion or some other kind of very large bird. But I don't have any explanation as to why the number's up. It could just be that it could just be where they ended up expiring. So I have no explanation at all.
Okay, thank you.
The seagulls don't have enough to eat with all the restaurants closed. Anything else, Tom?
No, that's it. Thank you so much.
So I have one go back. Last time we talked about parties in the harbor, the electrified, amplified sound, and people congregating, and we said we'd bring it up at the next quarterly report. Anything to report on that, Chief Metzger?
So I know PD is going to want to weigh in on this as well. There's been a handful of these kinds of activities. Everything, it's all related to what you observed earlier, Mr. Light, that COVID, people are looking for some kind of way of socializing, yet having a good time. The harbor's a natural place for that. The problem with it is that there are processes that ought to take place anytime there's going to be a large gathering anywhere in the city. Doesn't matter whether it's landside or waterside. There needs to be processes where all the different kinds of considerations for a planned event are addressed. What it really comes down to is that the individuals who put this out for people to come and attend were approached and were advised of the requirements, and they disregarded those requirements. The best thing that fire could do, because we don't have enforcement authority on the water, apparently, is to at least make sure that those people who did attend conducted themselves in a safe way and didn't impact the harbor area in a way that would impact or adversely put at risk either people coming and going into and out of the harbor who weren't part of that whole music scene, and also the people who were attending could do it in reasonable safety. So to my knowledge, I don't know that there's been any progress made with getting further cooperation from that person or those people that would put on these kinds of events. My personal fear is that unless we get a handle on this, there's going to be some sort of a bad outcome related to this. And I just don't want to see that be the driver for other kinds of proactive measures we ought to be taking on the water.
I mean, that's my main concern. I had some folks on social media say that they heard that I want to stop parties in the harbor, and that couldn't be further from the case. I actually think they're a neat idea, but what do you do if you have two people that want to hire a band and amplify sound out there at the same time? And I've seen it, I've seen it personally, and I've seen videos on social media of people doing a lot of unsafe practices. They're not social distancing. They're climbing on each other's boats without masks. They're approaching from the stern, while engines are idling, and people are all drinking and all of that kind of stuff. So, I just think people know that city employees are cognizant of it and at least advising people on it. So I think that puts the city at risk if something bad does happen. So I'll wait till the end of the police report, but this does concern me that this is continuing to go on and nothing's going on in the city. I don't want the Tidelands or Uplands budget affected by some lawsuit because of something that was foreseeable and preventable. Okay, thank you. I have nothing else. Leslie, it looks like you raised your hand.
Yes, thanks for the report. I was just gonna take a guess on the PFDs. I wonder, I think it's probably just a lack of education. People probably liken SUPs to other board sports, surfboards, boogie boards, and don't think that it's a requirement, maybe just a advisement to be safe, not a requirement. So we probably just need to, I don't know what existing signage is there at the hand launch and other entry points, but we probably just need an even a broader message to there's a lot of new people trying it out. So,
yep. Yeah, when I first came on, there was a lot of PFD violations and it seemed to ramp down and now it's going back up. So right. Yep. I think it's the new people doing it from COVID, because I've seen more SCPs out there this past year than the previous. So I suspect that's the case.
And we do have signage at various locations. And I would say, earlier we were getting a lot of SUP rentals that were going out of established brick and mortars. We do know that there's this challenge that we constantly have, and we'll probably be talking about this with you again, maybe in March or so, with regard to mobile operators who come and, they get a dial up for a rental and then they show up and they drop off the rental. And I would like to hope that they were responsible enough to also drop off a PFD at the same time, but I can't guarantee that that's actually happening. So,
well, I think there's probably a lot of people just buying inflatable SUPs at Costco too, right? So
yeah, you do have that as well. You have people who are, deciding that it's a new thing to do to get outside during times when you can't, and they aren't, to your point, aware that they need to have the PFD with them as well. All right. Well, I think if you don't have any other questions for Chief Metzger, we can roll over to PD. I'm not sure between the three of you. Mario, are you doing the initial discussion?
I'm not, but I'm here. I want to introduce myself, though.
Okay.
So, hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Mario Fizlich. I'm the recently promoted new captain, so there's three of us now. I'm in charge of Patrol Bureau, which oversees our Maritime Enforcement Unit and our pier. So, my last Public Safety Commission meeting was about 8 years ago. So times have changed. Since when did we start doing Zoom meetings? But I am looking forward to get back into the council chambers. Hopefully we could do that sometime soon, because it's more personable and it's much better when we're all in the same room, and seems like it's a great time. But so my name is Mario Fizlich. If you guys ever need anything, I'm the new patrol captain, and obviously I'm sticking around. I'll be coming to a lot more of these Public Safety Commission meetings. Lieutenant Jeff Mendez is here he has our stats, our fourth quarter stats, yearly stats, and also information in regards to the boat parties or any questions that you guys may have. Thank you.
I'm never sure if you're ready or not, or if there's a little bit of a time delay. So point to me, or let me know if we're not moving fast enough. This Zoom, this remote meeting medium is a whole new experience, and even like the Pledge of Allegiance looks like it's a little bit of a juggling act to get everything to happen. So we do our best. I wasn't sure if you wanted us to weigh in as those topics came up. I know that Commissioner Kazan talked a little bit about the public safety message or messaging about stand-up paddle boards and about the Life Vest the last time around, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then obviously we're here to talk a little bit about the boat parties and some of the activities in the harbor. So I'm going to give you an overview of our fourth quarter statistics, and then we're happy to answer any questions you have about any of those other issues. So when we talk about statistics, I went back and watched the last meeting. Congratulations to the new chairs, by the way. Saw at the end of the meeting that there was a handoff. That's always exciting. And I know that I mentioned during the last meeting when we started, we kind of ran through all the statistics or talked a little bit about an overview of the statistics. And one of the things that happened, because we know that your time is valuable, we tend to run through things pretty quickly. So I'm hoping this time around we'll have an opportunity for you to point out the areas of your specific concern. And then we also do a good job of highlighting our activities in the Pier and Harbor area. Said that, to provide some context about our activities down there, a snapshot of what we accomplish. I wanted to give you an overview of the fact that we responded to more than 400 unique incidents in the harbor area. They ranged from the full gamut, from the serious to the mundane. But each has its own unique story. And one component of those things are the enforcement side of things. I know that's always a topic that comes up. And believe me when I tell you that just as much input we get from folks who want to see us issue citations and take enforcement action, we get the voices from the other side who want us to take it easy on people and are constantly reminding us that they don't want a heavy-handed police force. And really that's our job, to find that balance and to really maintain relationships with everyone that we serve. And that's really our focus, is to try to strike that balance. And I think that's an important point when we talk about the harbor parties as well. So in those 400 plus incidents, 170 of those were enforcement related. That's categorized as enforcement contacts for suspicion that someone violated a law, from the big to the small. And that's on the water, on the roads, walking streets, on the sand. It's not just in one section of the Pier Harbor area. It's all over the place. And that's one of the great things about working down there, is the variety of terrain and areas and people you encounter really makes it a rich experience. In addition to that, and circling back to the public outreach component that Commissioner Kazan brought up last time, about messaging, about the safety-related components, these are just formal foot patrols on the pier, but we walked over 108 formal foot patrols on the pier. That doesn't include those informal trips where someone walks from point A to point B. That's all times of the day and night, police officers and police personnel going down to the harbor, walking the pier proper, walking around the different areas, the old Samba. It doesn't just include the straight pier and the horseshoe pier, it includes all areas of the pier. So I think it's a pretty significant number. And during those travels, those are the times when it may not necessarily be enforcement related, that we stop and talk to the brick and mortar stand-up paddleboard operators. And we also know if we can't directly see people that are, dialing and dropping off equipment, we may have a suspicion that they're involved in it. And believe me that we also contact those people, have a nice warm handshake conversation, and remind them of their safety obligation if they're not doing so. Besides the fact there's some ambiguity about whether they need to be licensed or not. The fact that when you're talking about someone's safety, it's the ultimate responsibility. And if they are facilitating someone with an SUP or any type of craft that's going to see the water, that they need to make sure that the person is adhering to the safety standards. So hopefully that addresses a little bit about that component or part of it. And then, like I mentioned during the last time we had the pleasure of being with you, we also message on Instagram, on social media, through these foot patrols and all the different avenues that we have to try to push that strong message, as well as the signage and the other measures that are taken. So in those foot patrols and in those enforcement contacts, just to give you an overview, some of the violations that people were issued citations for were everything from a dog at large, basically a dog that didn't have a leash, overhead casting, smoking in public. I know that comes up frequently at council meetings, or it has in different commissions and community input, that we pass this ordinance and it doesn't get enforced, or they want to see more enforcement. It does. It just may not be apparent, or it may not be the main focus, but in our travels, if we see those violations, enforcement action is taken. And then a number of open container violations, which, really all parts of the city, that's a constant battle to try to keep on top of those violations. And then the last part of that is sometimes people use temporary structures on the pier, and it could be a tent, it could be some other type of structure. The use of that temporary structure on the pier is in violation of the municipal code, and we did issue a citation for that violation. The reason this is analogous to other issues that come up, and even to the party on the harbor story or dynamic, is because a lot of times we'll get calls about tents or other structures on the pier, and we go down and people are there early in the morning with their kids, and no one's using it as an abode or a temporary residence. They're just using it as a temporary shelter, and we have to find that balance between people bringing their kids down early in the morning. I know my dad had the joy of that experience. His folks came from the East Coast, and when they came here, fishing at 2 or 3 in the morning was what they did. And I know other people have that same practice. So we don't want to kick kids out in the cold. So what we do with all people, regardless of their housing status or their circumstances, we go down, we advise them and give them an opportunity to correct it if they're in violation of the municipal code, and then we proceed from there. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a snapshot of what we were able to accomplish in the fourth quarter. I'm sure people have questions about the boat parties and maybe some other issues, and that's why we're here. We're here for you. So please let me know.
Okay, thank you. And congratulations to Captain Fitzelish. I hope I said that correctly. And appreciate your detailed report, Officer Mendez. I do have a question in your notes. You do bring up the parties. So it does look like you intervened on the parties. What's your assessment of that?
I just wanted to mention one other issue that's important before we go into it. And I'm sorry I forgot to mention it, but the last time we were together in October, I talked a little bit about our vessel having a trim motor issue, and I know Captain Hoffman came to a meeting before that and talked about the new safety collar and new motors we're getting on the vessel. Fortunately for us, the joys of vessel stewardship and all the challenges and ups and downs that come along with that should be a little bit easier for us, because the vessel's now in the state of Washington, and those grant funds are being used to outfit the vessel with the new safety collar, and then it'll go down and get new outboard motors. So we should be ready to go with practically a brand new piece of equipment by the time summer rolls around. So just wanted to let everyone know, give everyone an update about that.
Okay. My question on the parties still stands. What was the level of engagement with the parties? I see your note in the details here.
Yeah. So I know we talked about it briefly, and I alluded to the fact that sometimes there's police action that's taken that may not be highly visible to people, but there always is some action taken, whether it's right then and there or maybe at a later time. So part of the dynamic when you take enforcement action is the pre-incident conduct of the police. And we would need days and weeks and months to talk about all the dynamics involved with what the expectation is on the law side for police conduct and intervening and enforcing the law and what the expectation is. It's gotten very complex. But part of the assessment is what was the crime that was occurring when the police contacted the person to enforce the law? In that instance, I've heard some people the last time talk about, well, swimming in the harbor is maybe something we want to encourage. Obviously, it's illegal. I know your stance, Chair Light, was that it's dangerous and you observe some dangerous activity. We're there to monitor and make sure if someone goes in the water and looks like they're struggling that we can intervene. I'm sure the fire and the county lifeguard side is in the same boat. But along with monitoring it is the fact that we also take crime reports, and those crime reports for violations of law are sent to the city attorney's office, and then they can decide whether to file charges or not. So while it may have that, it may be more, in the short term, it may be a little more, sorry for the loss of words. It may be a little bit easier to see if we issue someone a citation on the bow of the boat or at the boat, but that may not be the best practice. If you have a number of people together, it may be, something that is inflammatory. It may cause more problems than the safety of the people that are involved in the incident. We're just trying to balance those things. But what we did do, and I alluded to it, is we did complete crime reports. We asked our partners on the fire side in the Harbor Commission or the Harbor Patrol to do the same thing. And then those are forwarded to the city attorney's office for their review, and they can decide whether to file charges or not. So we did complete that.
Have you issued citations during the parties or as a result of the parties?
I don't believe directly, but Sergeant Sapien's here with us, and because he supervises and is on the vessel, he can tell you specifically whether or not we have, but I don't believe so. And I don't know what the city attorney has done as far as the follow-up on those crime reports either, unfortunately.
So Sergeant Sapien, were you going to answer that question?
No citations were issued during that, but basically what we did was document what happened and wrote a crime report and forwarded that to the city attorney's office.
Okay. Can we get copies of the crime reports related to the parties?
I believe so.
Yeah. We'll ask the city attorney, and if they're okay with releasing it, then we'll facilitate you getting a copy of it.
Wasn't a public record?
If it's an active investigation, it can be withheld. That's really the prerogative. So
I understand.
As a courtesy and following the right practice, we need to ask.
Okay. And I noticed a lot of the enforcement actions with regard to poaching. Are those generally around the breakwater, or are you guys going further out?
No, that's generally inside our harbor.
So you'd get tipped off by someone that someone was poaching and you pull them over, or you see someone actually conducting poaching within the harbor?
We've done a couple of joint operations with Fish and Game, and they have a specially trained dog that they bring out that can sniff bags and find lobsters and do different things.
Wow. Okay, that's all I had. Let's see. I wasn't watching who brought up their hand first, so I will go with Vicky first this time. You're on mute, Vicky.
My only question is the amount of mental illness reports. Can you expound on that a bit?
Yeah. So those are.
Was that joint with a mental health professional that's in a ride-along, or can you tell us about those?
Absolutely. It depends on the circumstances and it depends on the time of day. We do have a co-response model. We have clinicians from the Los Angeles Department of Mental Health that ride with our officers and do a co-response model for the most critical incidents. And then every police officer is trained about the signs and symptoms of mental illness and how to facilitate getting someone to a LPS facility, which is basically the law that governs psychiatric facilities, and getting them to some place where they can get some mental health assessment and help if they need it. So that could be people that are actually transported, that people that we go out and assess and don't meet the criteria and are left there at the scene. It all just depends on the circumstances.
Does that number seem to be up from last year?
I don't have year to year on that statistic. I don't know if Jason knows. But one thing that does happen in the county at large is there's definitely a shortfall of these LPS beds. And you'll hear the term 5150 of the Welfare and Institutions Code for a mental health hold or evaluation. There may be 10 or 12,000 people identified during a homeless count that are suffering from mental illness. And in the county, they may only have a couple thousand LPS beds available to treat people. So you can see the deficit there. And a lot of times what happens is when we take people to these LPS facilities, they're triaged and the most severe people are forwarded to the next step. And those that they're able to stabilize are released back onto the street.
Well, that makes sense. Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
You're welcome.
Let's see, we'll go with Leslie next.
Sorry, I just forgot to put my hand down. No questions. Thanks
Okay.
for the report.
Commissioner Carlson?
You're welcome.
Thanks. Thanks for the report. So similar questions. How's your staffing on the water and with COVID? I know you don't have the boat right now, but you still have the pier.
Yeah, like I mentioned last time, it hasn't changed drastically. With the boat not in the water, we used a combination of various resources. And that number I gave you of 108 separate foot patrols, that's a composition of all police personnel, all days and times of the week, not just in a traditional, Friday to Sunday, daytime hours operation. Everyone's responsible for providing police service down there in the Pier Harbor complex.
Thanks. Okay. And one final comment, and I'm not sure if Chief Metzger is still on. This would be for him too. In your report, you have statistics on both fish and game license checks and registration checks. You might want to consider adding the boater's license check. The boater's license requirement goes up every year. As of January 1st, boater's licenses are now required for 40 and under. Every year it goes up by another 5 years. So, another decade or two, and most of the members of the Harbor Commission will even be required to have them.
They're gaining on me.
Yeah, they're gaining on me too. I completely defer to you guys on, how you approach any given interaction with the public. I am not saying pull everybody over and check their licenses. I'm just saying it's one more thing potentially on the list. Maybe not this year, but one of these years, it's going to be, one more thing everybody out there is required to have. I care about it because I'm a scuba diver, and I hope someday they teach people what that red flag with the white stripe means. So, we'll see. Anyway, just a comment for you to consider going down the road. Thanks.
Got it. Thank you.
That's it.
Okay, no other hands up. So I have a question. I'd like to, what would you like to see? What, if you were king for a day, what's your druthers on city policy with respect to those parties on the harbor?
Is that for me, or is that for, I don't want to use an extreme example to give you a hypothetical, but let's just say we go down there and someone's shooting fireworks off the vessel, and there's small children being tossed off the vessel, and there's some intoxicated people that you can't get around in the harbor safely. That's a different set of circumstances than going down and seeing people that on its face are violating some municipal codes. And we make an assessment and decide that the most prudent route for everyone involved, including the people, many of them that we have day-to-day contact with and are friends and family and members of the community and people we interact with all the time, that not normally lawbreakers, but in that case are in violation of the statute, that we take a crime report and we move on, we monitor it, and if someone needs a rescue, we do that. Is a completely different scenario than the out of control party with the open flames and all the danger that comes along with it, where we would, be compelled to intervene right then and there. So I think in that respect, we have the tools we need. It's just a matter of maintaining the relationships we have with everyone in the community and providing a value and trying our best to ensure safety and not making something worse than it is on its face, if that makes sense. It's all assessment. It really depends on, every contact is unique. There are no two that are the same, and that's why we get paid to make that assessment and to be reasonable in our actions.
So you think you've got the tools you need, you wouldn't want to see any kind of policy change or direction with regard to parties on boats?
I can tell you,
In the middle of the harbor.
I can tell you without showing you the crime report, I do have copies of them, but there's a laundry list of violations there. Most of them, I believe, are infractions. There may be a discussion in the community and the council and everyone else involved, whether the penalty should be a misdemeanor or not. That's outside of our purview and really what we're going to weigh in on. But I think that there is a comprehensive set of regulations and statutes that we can enforce. It's just a matter of the circumstances being appropriate and of when and where to take that enforcement action.
Yeah.
And can I weigh in on this?
Yeah, I'm going to ask you for your opinion next, so please do.
So this all starts with whether or not the organizers of these events are going to respect and abide by the city's requirement for them to submit applications for these special events wherever they're going to occur, water or landside, doesn't matter. They have failed to meet their obligation to do that. And that's where all this starts, because we have to have an understanding of what they intend to do on the water so that we can review it, issue a permit, allowing them to do what they've laid out, and then everything should be fine, presuming that they conduct themselves in a lawful way. But absent the submission of an application and the granting of a permit, can't bar the door. There's just no ability to anticipate what's going on. And as you have pointed out as well, you could equally have two competing events going on in the same time. How do you fairly and non-arbitrarily enforce the rules and enforce the law in those situations unless we have a basis for telling them you can't do that, which is basically them following the permit process?
Yeah. So has anybody pulled permits to have a party in the harbor that you're aware of?
I don't have any information that they have. To my knowledge, we've not had any. We've had somebody start the process and at least explore what it was. And when he decided not to do it, he was advised that he would be in violation of the city ordinance on that. And he did not respond in a way that I would consider to be responsible. He just kind of blew it off.
Okay. Director Proud, do you have any position on that?
No, I was actually going to say exactly what Chief Metzger said, which is our concern is primarily around the advance notice and the ability to try to address situations that might occur within the harbor from a public safety perspective. My growing concern is that, it's going to be concert Sundays in the harbor every weekend. And if we don't somehow try to find a way to get it under control, that, we will lose control. And so, the permitting process is the way we do that everywhere else in the city is we ask people who are wanting to have an event. We're not necessarily opposed to the event. We just want to know, what's going to happen, who's going to be there, kind of their best guess of how many people might attend so that we can take the appropriate safeguards. So, I would say if they continue to ignore, even despite our making contact, if they continue to ignore the process and coming in to speak with us, whether that be fire, police, or our office, or whoever the case may be, then I think we should be pretty hard on them until they get the message that, we're not saying no, we're just saying let's do it in a reasonable manner where we're all aware of what's happening out there.
Okay, thanks. Roger, did you re-raise your hand? I didn't.
I did. Yeah. Thanks for noticing. Just so we know and can potentially spread the word, what is the process? Is it a 1-page form or a 500-page form? Is it $5, 5,000? Is it insurance?
No, I mean, typically, we have special events throughout the city, and we have these special event forms that people fill out, and they tell us, as best they can to describe the event. Are they going to have live music? Are they going to have if it's a landside event, probably a little bit different on the water, but are they going to have alcohol? Are they going to block streets? Are they going to block access? I mean, just give us a general sense of what's going to happen in that process. And And the city has a very well-established process where those things go through a special events group. We bring in public works, we bring in police, we bring in fire, and those events are vetted through the city process so that any agency that may have a concern can vet those concerns. The fees are nominal. I mean, the fees will be usually driven by if there's a need for us to commit city resources to the event. So if we feel that these events are at the scope and scale where we need to have dedicated harbor patrol out, or we needed to have dedicated law enforcement folks out on the water, then we look to the event organizers to offset those costs for the city. Otherwise, we're having to absorb those costs for their particular events. So, it's not a particularly onerous process. I mean, we have events all across the city on a regular basis. And I think if this particular organizer would just take the time to come in, have the conversation, respect some of the feedback that they're getting from the public safety folks in particular, we could find a way to maybe try to do this in an orderly fashion. So they could contact our office first, and they're certainly free to contact public safety first. Either way, they could reach out and start this special event application process.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't know the primary boat owner, but I overheard a conversation, and it sounded like, this was going to turn into a regular thing. I think the weather may have changed that, but.
Well, and that's, like I said before, that's really, I mean, Chief Metzger and I have talked about this. That's our principal concern, is that it just every weekend, and then it just starts to take on sort of this life of its own. It gets bigger, it's, and then we have a little bit of trouble trying to rein that back in. So,
yeah. And my concern is what happens when they start interfering with like an outrigger canoe race or a yacht club race.
Right.
Can I make a quick comment about those concerns and some of what a couple pieces there. Sometimes people apply for permits, whether it's special event and the full process or sound variants for amplified sound, and what they represent of what their plan is may not be what actually materializes on the day of the event. So then we learn from there that maybe we need to take a different course of action. So ultimately what happened with this circumstance, and I understand everyone's concerned about it growing, but there is a statute in the municipal code that allows for us to basically advise someone that because of their conduct, they're no longer welcome in the harbor. And if they return or are present, they're trespassing. So part of the conversation with this organizer was, understand you have plans to keep doing these types of events. We understand it's a pressure relief for everything that's going on and for people to be outside and to get together. We understand all those things. But because of what happened the previous time, we can't allow you to continue to conduct yourself this way. We can't allow you to have these events. And if you come back, that may be an option that we utilize or exercise to make sure it doesn't happen again. And then once we had that conversation, all of those things stopped. And that would be a conversation we'd have with anyone else that decides to throw an impromptu, whatever the size is or where it is, that if it happens again, if it's something we need to take immediate action for, like I talked about, we would do so. But if it's something where we can advise them, maybe take a crime report like we did in this circumstance, and just let them know if you come back and you are engaged in a similar activity, we're going to ask you to leave. And if you don't leave, then you're trespassing, and we'll take enforcement action right there. So that's how that was resolved this past year. Okay.
So you know about them in advance?
Well, we did once that one happened. And then we figured out who the organizer was and were able to contact that person.
I'm just concerned if there's not one process, multiple events. They don't all have to be parties, interfering with one another. And I could just see a boat race trying to finish there and navigating all those paddleboarders, kayaks, and people as they get more and more drunk.
And that's really the purpose of having those municipal codes, to make sure that we're managing that resource so we don't have these opposing wills showing up and have conflict. That's the purpose of those statutes.
Yeah, I just question, at what point do you force permits? Because the first guy you say, I want to do a permit, you have to do a permit. Then they ask, what about all those other ones that happened without a permit? So I'd like to ask an open question to the commissioners. You think this is something, should we just sweep this off the table, or is this something we think we need to address, and would want to recommend something to city council? So I'm going to go around and ask each of you. Vicki, what's your?
Well, my concern is if we have them have to take out a formal permit, What about yacht club races? And what about the boat? Well, boat parade does have a permit.
Yeah.
What about yacht club races? What about the kids practicing in the harbor for junior sailing? I mean, it could really open a can of worms. I think an informal way of doing it, a one-page thing to alert the city staff, police, harbor, and whoever else needs to be alerted, would be nice. They'd also should receive a list of rules, like they can't block the channel, they can't block the moorings that are rented out, things of that nature. So that's my comment.
So should we get engaged, or do we, I mean, that's the question. Do we?
I trust the police department and the harbor patrol to do their jobs. They know what's out there. They know what's going on. And unless they ask us for their help, I think we've actually sent them enough information and our concerns that, you know, I'm okay with letting it go.
Okay. Roger?
I sort of agree with Vicky. I kind of like it. I've never been to one, but I often find myself going down to work on my boat on Sunday afternoons and there's music. I've enjoyed it. I wanted to go to one, to be perfectly honest. I haven't made it there yet. I don't want it to turn into, you know, I see pictures of like Lake Havasu and stuff like that. I don't want to see it, you know, turn into, you know, that kind of gridlock and chaos. Something you guys can't manage. It sounds like you guys are managing it pretty well. The couple times I've seen it, it's been, you know, less than a dozen boats. I have not seen it every weekend. I get the sense from the way you guys have talked about this that you've seen some stuff I haven't, that you've seen some issues I haven't. So it sounds like you're working it, and I trust you. I'm concerned about what this might turn into when the weather gets nicer. You know, what this is like at spring break or 4th of July or something like that. But, you know, if you guys think you have the tools to manage it, great. You know, it sounds like you've already reached out to some people, reaching out and meeting them halfway. You know, you can't just sit back and expect people to, you know, grab a permit if they don't know the permit process exists. They may know the permit process exists, but, you know, if I had a boat and an amplified guitar, I might go down there and play without, you know, knowing that there was permits. So, you know, if we did reach out to them halfway with a simpler permit and said, look, just schedule it, just tell us what's going on. That doesn't seem like a big deal, especially because there is so much else going on in the harbor. Vicky's right. There is a lot going on in the harbor with calendars and stuff, but we already coordinate with, you know, between yacht clubs and things like that. So, you know, having the harbor patrol included on the schedule for when the kids are practicing and when the 2 weekly or 3 weekly boat races are, it doesn't seem like too hard to do. So we could try that. Anyway, I agree with Vicky that, you know, I defer to the police department and the harbor patrol, and I hope we're giving you guys the support you need and the tools you need, and you're, you know, looking forward to what happens when the weather gets nicer.
Okay, Leslie?
I agree largely with what Vicky said. Leave it up to Harbor Patrol and the police. I wonder if there are certain groups that are, if there's a few players that are putting these on, bringing them together to create a dialogue to make them more aware of the specific concerns, not just, you know, they might just be worried about getting busted for other things, but let them know what the real impetus for just being cognizant and deconflicting things is. We might be able to have more, you know, understanding of what's planned, deconflict things safer. Or for random things, I mean, that's a bit hard. I just on the fly, I was trying to find the permit on the city website, and I can't find it unless it's called the Pier Entertainment permit. I don't know. So there could just be I'm sure there's some lack of knowledge from just random people of that you'd even have to get a permit. Much like you just play on your deck an acoustic guitar in your private home, it's your private boat. course, people just gather and then they might think it's not really their problem if people are just observing, and not realizing they have to get a permit. But I think too, just jumping on it and taking more of a proactive approach to try to make things better, because I am sure we're going to see more of it, would be prudent. And I would think that the most at-risk regular event would be the children's boating sailing program. There is, you want to keep those kids safe, so.
Yeah, so my concern is similar to Chief Metzger's. You know, I don't want to stifle them, but I think, Matt, you're getting the cute factor when I don't want to stifle them, but I also want whoever's throwing it to feel responsible for what's going on. You know, similar if you have a block party, somebody has to sign up as the lead and take the hit for that. When I did a paddle out protest with Surfrider, I had to make Surfrider responsible for the safety of people at the event and guarantee certain conduct. So that's my one concern. Tom, you haven't weighed in yet?
No, I definitely think the permit is a good idea. Like, if just as long as it becomes common knowledge, somehow getting that information out and making the permit process really easy and informal. But I agree with Commissioner Callahan that I think right now what we don't want, we want to be proactive about this. Obviously, we don't want to get it out of control. So keep monitoring it. But I'm all for, I think, I'm with you that I think making sure we have some kind of permit process and have somebody's name on these things that is responsible would certainly would give us, give us somebody to talk to and make sure that we can keep it under control.
Okay, Matt, you're on mute. You know you're on mute. Can somebody read his lips? Is he flipping me off verbally? I guess we have a technical difficulty.
There's 2 mute buttons, at least in my app, right?
Steven, you could try to unmute him.
Yeah, I was trying to do that. I don't seem to be able to do that. I can ask, the option I have is to ask to unmute, which of course everybody's already done. Let me see here. Stop video.
Oops.
Yeah, I don't have the ability to unmute. I can see that the microphone is showing is muted, but it doesn't allow me to do that.
Can you dial in, Matt, or email or something?
Smoke signals.
What was that sign language?
He's going to write for us.
Oh, I get what he's saying. Okay, hold on. So
What's he saying?
Well, there is a, where's the chat function? Is that, Matt, are you trying to use the chat function?
Uh-oh, he's got tech support.
He's got tech support.
I don't even see the chat function.
I don't think Matt meets the qualifications to be a commissioner if he can't operate Zoom.
There he goes. He's
That
off.
unmute me?
Hey, there
Yes.
you go.
Amazing. Okay, Matt.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay, because now I can't hear you. Anyway, I lost my cursor. Sorry for the delay and everything. But basically, I agree with what Vicki said. Seems like our public safety departments haven't handled, and if it becomes an issue, I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to expand on it again. But at the moment, I kind of just leave it the way it is and leave it in their hands to deal with.
Okay, I'm not sure that's what they're saying. I think Chief Metzger gave a different opinion than at least that's what I heard, Chief. You can correct me if I
So,
missed.
yeah, it's all, I can't hear you. So that's the next thing I'm working on. You know what? I wonder if yeah. But good night, Jack.
Okay. Matt, I'm gonna give you 30 seconds and we can't afford to just sit here.
He's muted again.
And he can't hear us.
Yeah, he can't hear us.
Okay.
Go
So,
ahead.
Chief, I understand.
I think he's saying keep going.
Chief, maybe I misunderstood you. You don't think we're doing things properly is what I kind of surmised. You'd like to see more control. Not you, Matt, Chief Metzger.
The reality is that the city has a process in place for special events. I think these musical events on the water qualify as a special event.
Mhm.
Certainly, it's worth the debate to determine if they qualify as a special event. But if they do, they should follow the ordinance that governs special events in the city of Redondo Beach. I don't think that's anything that ought to be up for debate if they are, in fact, if they qualify as a special event.
I don't think anybody disagrees with that. I think our consensus is that we trust the police department and the Harbor Commission enough to let them make the decisions
You mean
and
the Harbor Patrol?
pardon me?
You said Harbor Commission, you mean
Harbor Patrol. And for them to ascertain who needs a permit, who doesn't, and to enforce whatever they decide is necessary.
Okay.
So just please keep in mind that you're asking us to make a determination on the fly when the event is ongoing. And as opposed to compelling somebody who wants to host the event, requiring them to go through the review. The value of the permit process is in the review of the application describing the event. We can't enforce that very well when we come upon the event and there's been no opportunity for the city to take whatever prescriptive measures ought to take place in preparation for the event. When it's already going on, the horse is already out of the barn.
So
Yep.
would you be more comfortable if we directed maybe city council to make it mandatory to have a permit?
Special events by definition shall be submitted to the committee in the city that governs special events. So to me, this is pretty clear cut that if somebody wants to host a special event in the city of Redondo Beach, they have to apply for it.
Okay, I feel
Police side, sorry.
we're in
Sounds like
circles.
Agree with the fire department, because then it sounds like you should just shut them down. You don't have a permit, you're shut down.
Well, and that goes back to my comment about us taking a crime report. So if we see something that we believe is a violation of law, but we don't think that its nature would compel us to take immediate action and shut it down right then and there, we would take that crime report, we would document all the facts, and we'd forward it to the city attorney's office, and then they would make the determination of whether or not to file charges for not having a special event permit, for blocking the channel, for swimming, for all those things that we documented in the report. So
Have you made a crime report on not having a permit?
those facts are included in those same crime reports. So all the facts about what activity occurred, who was involved, all those things go to the city attorney's office, whether we label it as blocking the channel or swimming in the harbor or whatever it is, they can use
Whatever report you turned in.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because if they had a permit, we would note this is a permitted city event And even if someone has a permit, let's say the scope and nature of what they have is outside of what their permit allows, we may take a crime report and forward that to the city attorney's office because they may be in violation of what was agreed upon.
Keep in mind as well, the permit process specifically identifies the responsible party to whom we would then go back to and point out that certain violations did occur. We don't have that ability in these cases where we just kind of come upon it.
Yep. Okay. I don't sense anybody wants to, but I would if anybody at this time wants to make a motion with respect to, making a recommendation to council or taking this any further, I'm open to that. Barring that, I'd like to shut this down and then we'll just do a motion to receive and file and move on. So does anybody want to do a motion with respect to bringing this up to, for further action of this of this commission? Going once, going twice, I sense no. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to receive and file and end this agenda item.
Motion to receive and file.
Second.
Anybody opposed? Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate the report and the conversation. So that was good.
Chair Light, before we leave this item, I just want to make sure, and it may not be broad public knowledge, but it sounds like it is public knowledge at this point, that our Chief Metzger is going to be leaving the city.
Oh,
and
no.
I want to publicly thank him. I've privately sent him a note with my regards, but I want to publicly thank him for all the support that he's provided to me in the time that I've been here. He's been a consummate professional. He has been generous with his time in our department. He's helped me out on hiring boards. He's, worked with us on various projects, and I couldn't have asked for a better person to be sitting in that chair and be helping us in our harbor activities. So I want to wish him the very best in his new endeavors. And I wanted to make sure that we had a chance to recognize him here at the Harbor Commission as well.
Well, thank you, Chief Metzger, and good luck with your future endeavors. Appreciate your support.
Thank you, everybody. Stephen, thank you for those warm words. I love you, brother.
All right, you're the best.
Okay, I think we're ready to move on to J2.
All right.
Thank you, Chief.
With that, I'm going to move on to item J2. I've lost my agenda to see exactly how it's worded. So item J2 is worded on the agenda. Here we go.
After J1.
Possible action regarding the status of the transient vessel moorings in the main harbor channel. So I would like to acknowledge the fact that we do have, I'm going to look at my list of attendees, 2 or 3 different folks here who want to help us on this particular agenda item. I think I'll lead us through an initial conversation. We have our Director of Public Works, Ted Simon, our Assistant Director of Public Works, Mike Klein, and then we have Craig Stanton, who is our manager of the Redondo Beach Marina and helps us manage the moorings program. So what I'd like to do to start out with is hopefully I'm going to be able to share my screen. So let me take a stab at that and see if I can get that up here. Okay, that didn't work. Let's try this again. Share application. There we go. Okay. Hopefully you are all able to see that.
Yep.
Good, because I've lost all of you. I can't see any of you now. I have a full screen with the PowerPoint presentation, but I don't have any of your faces now. So actually, I'm going to go over on this. It's not going to let me. Okay. Well, let me just walk you through the PowerPoint presentation, and then I'll pull it down so I can see all of you and we can have our discussion. The reason that this is, let me just start out with an overview. So as you all know, we have a transient vessel mooring field that was installed in the harbor in 2014. There's approximately 25 transient vessel moorings in the mooring field. And that mooring field was created in part with funding that was from the Department of Boating and Waterways, a grant that we received from them in the amount of approximately $188,000. As you know, this budget season was particularly difficult for the harbor enterprise. We had structural deficits in both the Uplands and the Tidelands Fund. And as part of the budget process, the city council directed the staff to explore the removal of all or a portion of the moorings in an effort for us to perhaps reduce our maintenance expenses. Just a little map. I'm sure you all know where the mooring field is, but if you're not familiar with where it is, kind of out to the western side of the channel there, just opposite of Mole C and the Portofino Hotel. In response to the city council's request, the Public Works Department contacted the Department of Boating and Waterways in June, right at the time we were going through the budget process. And the request at the time was to explore the possibility of removing 15 moorings and leaving 10 in place. Although in the conversations that Public Works had with the Department of Boating and Waterways, they did indicate that we were flexible and we could look at any possible combinations of removals and leaving some in place. It took a little while to get a response back, but they responded back in October and let us know that they would be amenable to us removing the moorings, but that the grant agreement requires reimbursement of the grant funds on a pro rata basis for any of the moorings that might be removed. So as we thought about that a little bit and the Public Works staff did some of their analysis on that, we started to look at what we thought was the value of each of the moorings that we have in the field. And the way we did that was we determined the value by dividing the grant amount, the $188,000, by the number of moorings, 25, and then dividing that amount by the number of years remaining in the grant agreement, in the initial grant agreement, not the number of years remaining, but the initial 20 years in the grant agreement. And when you do that math, the 188 divided by 25 divided by 20, you find that the annual value of those moorings are roughly $75.20 each.
So that math isn't correct, by the way.
Oh man, I checked that twice.
Nobody divided by 20. 188 divided by 25 is 75.20.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Nobody divided by the other 20 years.
Okay, so
376.
Okay, so then that's the annual value, the 25 moorings divided by the 188. Now, wait a minute. Let me come back to that.
Sorry.
Let me come back.
$31 is right.
What's that?
The $31 is right.
Yeah.
Yes,
So that's the that's the value divided by 20 years times 12 months in a year to get to the monthly value. So there are roughly 165 months remaining in the term of the grant agreement, and so this became the basis for us to determine what we thought the reimbursement would be to the Department of Boating and Waterways if we removed the moorings. So for 15, if we were to take 15 of the moorings out, and hopefully this math is correct, the reimbursement amount that would have to be paid back to the Department of Boating and Waterways would be roughly $77,500. If we were to take all 25 of the moorings out, the reimbursement back to the Department of Boating and Waterways would be roughly $129,200. So just keep those numbers in mind, as that would be money that would have to come out of our fund as reimbursement for grant proceeds if we were to go through the exercise of removing moorings. Now, what we didn't calculate and put into that number, but what would certainly be an additional cost, is we would actually have to contract with somebody to go out and do that field work to physically remove the moorings themselves. This is just the grant agreement component. There would be a separate cost that would be associated with physically removing the moorings themselves. So knowing that information and what it would cost us to do the grant reimbursement, wanted to take a look at a couple of other factors that are out there. The first is our mooring maintenance agreement that we have. We do that through a third-party vendor. And as most of you know, that includes cleaning the buoys and removing growth, monitoring the sand lines, replacing those for wear and tear when needed, inspecting the underwater mooring hardware and replacing that as needed. And then we get photo documentation whenever our vendor goes out there to do the maintenance so that we can see the current condition of the tackle that's out there. We currently have in our maintenance contract, we pay roughly $60,000 a year for that contract. One of the things that we have been investigating as part of this process is, could we reduce the contract by 50% and save $30,000 annually? We think we can do that. I think Craig could speak a little bit to what that would involve, but we think we could do that and still keep the moorings in usable condition. So that's our cost side. On our revenue side, the mooring usage and the revenues have been increasing since we transitioned the management from the Harbor Patrol to the Redondo Beach Marina, and just put up a couple of data points for you to see that change. In 2018, we had revenue of roughly $9,000 for the use of the moorings. And this year, a COVID year, we've already collected $18,600 through November. We have one more month to complete the year. So it's reasonable to think we'll be somewhere north of $19,000 when the year is completed. So from our perspective, we wanted to look at, okay, retain versus remove. If we retained the mooring field, and I did this on an annual basis, I used 14 years as opposed to the 165 months because the math was easier for our maintenance contract. We'd pay roughly $420,000 over that period of time, no inflation factored in, just rough numbers, $420,000 in maintenance. And we'd collect approximately $266,000 in revenue if we did that at $19,000 a year over those 14 years. So when we do that quick math, we see that the mooring field would still be a drag on us financially, but it would be roughly $154,000 of a drag over a 14-year period. So probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $10,000, $11,000 a year that we would be subsidizing the mooring program. If we were to remove the moorings, we would have to, as I mentioned earlier, these numbers now come back, we would have to reimburse the grant funds. And as I mentioned earlier, that reimbursement for the full mooring field would be $129,000. So when we look at those two numbers of retaining them versus removing them, the cost to us as an entity is almost a break-even proposition, because in addition, as I mentioned earlier, in addition to the $129,000 for grant reimbursement, we would still have to enter into a contract to actually go out and be the physical removal of those moorings. So from our perspective as staff, we don't particularly think that it's a worthwhile endeavor for us to take a public amenity that's within the harbor, and for what really amounts to, at this point, a $10,000 a year subsidy, if we can reduce that maintenance contract to $30,000 a year, that makes it really the right opportunity to take the moorings out. We think we're far better off to leave the mooring field intact, continue to work on opportunities to reduce our costs, continue to especially look at opportunities to increase usage of the mooring field, and hopefully we can continue to close that gap over time. So the city council is going to be considering this. The public works staff will be having this very same conversation with the city council. But before it went to them, we wanted to bring it to you for your discussion, to allow you to ask questions of either Ted or Mike or Craig about operations, about the mooring usage. And so our recommendation to you tonight would be to receive and file this report, and then make a recommendation, and we're not prescribing one to you, but make a recommendation to the city council to leave the mooring field intact if that's what you so choose to do. You certainly could make the counter recommendation, which would be to remove the moorings themselves, but we feel it's an amenity that's an important amenity for us to have in the harbor, and so that's not the recommendation that we're putting forward for you at this time. So now, if I can figure out how to get out of this screen. Hey, I did that. Okay, there you are. I think I have you back, or some of you back. Let me share. All right, can you hear me still though?
Yes.
Okay, so your screen is dark right now, correct? You're not seeing anything that I'm sharing?
We can
I'm
see
seeing
we can
I'm
see
seeing your
your
computer.
We can see a briefing. I can't see our faces. I can't see the gallery view, but I can go to participants and see who raised hands.
Yeah, Stephen, I can see your presentation. It's not in presentation mode, but I can actually see your screen on the screen here. You're still sharing your screen.
That's what I have. I still have your screen, but I also have everybody else too.
Stop that. This is the first time I've had an issue with sharing.
Yeah, there should be just a stop sharing.
Yeah, that's not letting me.
Yeah, the view mode I'm in, this is Roger, the view mode I'm in is side by side plus gallery, and it looks great. I see the presentation and everybody.
Well, if you
But
see each
that
other,
doesn't help you, Director.
yeah, my share button doesn't give me a whole lot of options. It just gives me advanced. Here, let me see if.
Let's just continue. I can only see the speaker, I think, because I'm on an iPad, not a full computer.
I'll continue to try to figure out if there's a way for me to turn that off, but I don't.
So I do have a question for you, Director Proud. It looks like your maintenance fee is either on or off. Did you scale the maintenance fee with the number of moorings?
So the analysis that I kind of threw up there was it's sort of an all or nothing analysis. I didn't run an analysis to try to scale it to say, what if we only did 15 or what if we only did 10? The $30,000 maintenance program would be a 50% reduction from what we currently do, and that would be across all of the moorings in the mooring field.
Right, but if we could get that reduction and then you half the number of moorings, you would think it's half the, may not quite scale to that, but it would be somewhere around, you would expect to be somewhere around half the maintenance cost.
That I don't know, Craig, if you have any thoughts on whether that's, or Mike or Ted, if you guys have any thoughts on whether it would scale that way or not. Feel free to jump in and answer that question if you have thoughts, or if you raise your hand, I can let you know and you can just jump in.
Was that to me, Stephen?
Yeah, why don't you, so did you understand the question that Jim asked?
That reducing the moorings by 50%, the maintenance will be reduced by 50%?
Well, I guess the question is this. So we currently have a contract for $60,000 a year. What I've presented to the commission is to say that, we could look at a contract that could be reduced by 50%. So we would be paying $30,000 a year, but that $30,000 a year would be for the entire mooring field. Maybe walk them through what that reduction in service would mean and how that would work.
Okay, so what we've discussed with Marine Tech, who's our contractor for the cleaning and maintenance. So if we bring the pickup wand and just letting the bow line sink to the water, so it'll basically be disabled, and we will keep our regular quarterly scheduled cleanings for the remaining 10 or 12 or whatever we decide on. So, and the rest of the annual moorings and the underwater inspections will still be included in that $30,000 price. And we'll also keep an eye on the ones that are disabled, just to make sure that they're not getting any heavy growth on those. And if that is the case, if they're getting some heavy barnacles or oysters or whatever, we can rotate those disabled ones back into service, just to make sure we don't have a big job in a year or so. So they will be maintained. All of our underwater inspections will still be on schedule. We'll just have less units to service is all.
So I'm confused. The 30,000 savings is for maintaining lesser moorings. Is that what I'm hearing? So we're reducing the usable moorings with this reduction in maintenance fees.
And
Yeah, so we manage the moorings through our office and through this reservation app that we recently took on, which is called DockWatch. It's very effective. We make contact with every person that's on a mooring. We assign every mooring that every boat goes on. So we have, for example, the A moorings 1 through 19. We would disable, 2 rows of those and just keep A 1 through 7 open. So The other ones would not be, with the exception of them getting wet and diving down and picking up the bow line, unusable. So we dictate where every boat goes currently. So we'll keep the larger moorings enabled, the B's and the C's that from the 50 to 60 foot and the 40 to 50 foot. And we could always put smaller boats on if necessary. And then we can also, we'll have half a dozen of the A moorings for the under 40 foot. And if we do have some kind of a special event, like the Beach Life Festival or a yacht club event or regatta or something like that, we'll be able to put those moorings back into service within a 2 days notice, cleaned and wands put back on and usable again. We've had that discussion.
And we don't have to repay the grant if we take off, if we render them unusable?
I think we would make the argument that even though we're not making them unusable, we're sort of rotating the program. Look, if we got enough revenue that we could start to bring more of them online, we could certainly do that if we ever got to that point. But the fact that we aren't, we rarely have a full mooring field, the fact that we're just rotating the use of this, I think we believe that we could accomplish that and still not trigger the repayment of the grant.
Okay, I understand. Yeah, what I misunderstood was the original report when I read it. I thought we were like stretching out how often we clean them or maintain them, but rather you're just making some idle, so you're not maintaining as many.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
and then the second question, we didn't get into it, but I am interested in, I see the statistics here, but I'm not sure I understand them because it looks, what I don't understand is we said the revenue went up, but okay, I see what I'm reading here. But what is the percent occupancy? It doesn't look exceedingly high.
no, it's not. I mean, I think,
There's like 3%.
yeah, in our staff report, this is trying to manage 3 different screens here. Hold on 1 second and I can tell you. Here we go. You see in the staff report, there's a little table, the percentage used, in 2018, we were only using 3.7%. Now we're using 8.6%. So, we have a tremendous number of mooring days available than we have current usage. We're like, my take on this is that we've seen, and I think Craig and his staff have done a great job of just, trying to increase the usage. We've tried to put more out into the boating community that the moorings are available. I think having them available to answer the phone and take the reservations on a more normal, regular type of schedule has helped with some of the bookings. So we are seeing an increase, and we've seen it year over year. We'd like to hope that will continue. Are we ever going to get to, something that looks like full moorings all the time? Just given where we're starting from, I think that's high.
Yeah, and I wouldn't expect that. I mean, it's just like the boat ramps. You have high use periods and low use periods. So yeah, I see that at Catalina. You over there in winter, you can pick up just about any mooring. But in the summer, you go there on July 4th and they have to raft and anchor out. So I wouldn't expect that. But do we have any peak season statistics to see what our, what is the max demand on a peak weekend?
I can just speak from the knowledge of us booking things that we don't normally have. I mean, I'd say the average use is probably 3 to 5 boats on an average weekend, summertime. And that could peak up to, I've never really seen it in the double digits, to be honest with you. So
wow.
When you see those numbers increase, those numbers are days of use in the spreadsheet that we supply to the city. So
okay.
While you're seeing this little spike in things, especially through the COVID, is that people's length of stay is increasing. Instead of staying for 1 or 2 nights, they're staying for the full 7 days. And, we're getting a lot of repeat customers. They're kind of getting quite popular, actually. I think it's a real good amenity for the city from what we've seen with the usage and the feedback we're getting.
And one of the things, Craig, I don't know if you want to speak about it. One of the things that we've talked about as an opportunity to perhaps increase usage of the mooring is actually looking at the time to extend the time that someone can actually be on a mooring. So, you know, we have a prescribed number of days that someone can be on a mooring, and then they have to go off of that mooring. Craig and I have talked about if there was some thought that we could extend that timeline, that might generate some additional nights for us as well.
Yeah.
And the, what's the maintenance periodicity now? Is it once a year, twice a year?
Quarterly cleanings and annual underwater inspection.
Okay. Okay, let's see.
And we kind of rotate the quarterlies to extend the wintertime periods when they're not in use as much as the summertime, and we do a little more frequently in the summertime. We kind of adjust that cleaning schedule, but it's still quarterly.
Okay, I'm going to go in the order I see hands here. So Matt?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry about the numbers thing. The 7520 is the $188,000 divided by the 25. So,
correct.
yeah, it was just.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So it's the total fee. So I got a lot of questions. What was the total cost to install the 25 moorings? I say that because if we undid the field, yes, we'd have to pay back Department of Boating and Waterways some portion of the grant money, but whatever other money was being used to install them in the first place, we've lost that portion also. Even if we don't actually have to pay it back to somebody, we haven't gotten the use of it. The way I'm looking at this is that I am completely comfortable with hibernating whatever moorings is deemed prudent, but keeping the entire mooring field alive and well, and cutting the maintenance proportional to whatever moorings we decide to hibernate. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So I know you didn't have the number off the top of your head of what the whole thing cost.
No, Matt, I apologize. I don't. I don't know what that was. I was looking back today to try to find in the older staff report, and I was not able to pull that out.
Would that money have come out of Tidelands?
Yeah, this would have been an entire Tidelands project.
Yeah, so I mean, I want to be able to account for that money also. And even though we don't have to pay it back per se,
It's still lost.
it still ends up being lost money if you take the moorings out. So I think that has to factor into the decision. The other thing that's interesting with regards to the statistics, which has been alluded to, but you could have one boat there for 30 days. That's 3% occupancy rate. You could have 25 boats there for one day. That's about 3% occupancy rate. But it's a huge difference with regards to going forward, how many mooring places that we have available. And I think that's what was kind of people were getting at looking at the numbers. So I heard mention that we don't have memory of more than 10 boats ever being moored there at one time. Craig, is that pretty much what you said? You said you don't remember double digit.
On average, I mean, we've had some spikes with this COVID, with the good weather, and with these concerts by the yacht club. There's been a little overflow from that, but generally, no, they're very underutilized numbers wise.
So I think we have to kind of look at how many moorings do we need to accommodate. Pick a number, 90% of the days out there. Another question is how easy is it, or what's the cost to hibernate and unhibernate a mooring position? We're not talking about taking them out, but you're talking about dropping lines to the bottom, removing the floats. How much work is involved in that?
We're not going to remove the buoys. We're going to leave all of the ground tackle intact, and we're just going to remove the pickup wand and let the bow line sink out, basically. So I think that would probably be an hourly thing with Marine Tech to hook those back up, but he said it can be done, reconnected and cleaned within 48-hour notice. So you're looking at 2 days of hourly rates for his crew, which
So it almost seems like you could do it on a quarterly basis when they're out here anyway. You could adjust how many moorings you have on a quarterly basis. Is that crazy?
We could, I mean, if we had some heads up that we had a special event or something like that, even for example, during the Beach Life Festival, they reserved all the moorings for that Beach Life Festival. And we had 2 under 40-foot moorings reserved. And granted that the ticket price was a factor as well, but they were, even in that event, they were way underutilized from what our predictions were. And 4th of July this year was very underutilized as well. I mean, the last year, I should say, but it's not as much as you'd think it would be. There's a lot of it's local stuff coming out of their slips and just want to go sit in the harbor and get away from their docks. We're starting to get a lot more actual transients that are
Get
traveling
away
up
from
and
their
down the
neighbors'
coast.
loud music. Well, so I guess where I'm going at is that it seems like it's something that could be managed based upon past history, future events that are scheduled, and adjusted almost quarterly when the company is out here doing the other cleanings. Hey, we want 5 more put online, or hey, why don't you drop these 5 and go from there and take the savings based on that, because it certainly doesn't seem prudent financially to give any money back to the Department of Boating and Waterways. That's it. That's where my opinion anyway.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Leslie?
I have some questions just on, the past that I don't think affect, my opinion, but I was curious about, presumably they were installed for, greater city merchant income, not strictly the mooring rent, but that of course we'd want to at least break even. I appreciate the creativity of kind of having the moorings as far as the maintenance, and if we can do that and even kind of evaluate after a half year before actually changing any of the lines and just being agile in that way, we might find, you started out with a $101,000 bill, you might find you have even more kind of ability to be flexible there. I wouldn't want to give up the grant money, I think, as well as the original cost to install. I think with the situations in the harbor and the pier that have got us tied up from improvements and development, I think that once we're out of that phase, this will pick up. So we just need some patience. I think it is an asset for the city. I was curious in the revenues, were those city revenues or the marina's revenues, and then we get a portion?
No, the marina is operated under a management agreement with the city. So whatever revenue they collect, it flows through to the city with the exception of management fees that we pay them for their operation. So that's money that by and large is a direct pass through to the city from the use of the moorings.
Okay, I didn't know what the pass-through percentage was. Okay. And then I was just curious about the income in 2014 through 2017. Presumably that was lower, and
you have to go back and look. At that time, the mooring field was being operated by the Harbor Patrol Division. And so we would need to kind of go back into their records and see. What I can tell you is it would be lower. We saw a substantial increase in the use of the moorings once we made the transition over from them being managed and operated by the Harbor Patrol to being managed by the Redondo Beach Marina. It was just night and day in terms of the use. And while it doesn't seem like a lot when you look at it in absolute numbers, it definitely was a dramatic increase from what we were using before.
Okay. So yeah, I think we should just leave it as is. Don't give up any of that grant money and continue to think creatively like you are as far as how we're maintaining.
Okay, thanks, Leslie. Roger?
Looking for the mute button. Thanks. So I like the idea of hibernating them. I agree with what others have said. This is an unusually tight budget year, so it's a good time to save money. And in the future, as we build things up, I hope there's a lot more use. I did have one specific question. You quoted a couple years of revenue, I think 2018 and 2020. In one of those years in there, maybe 2019, Beach Life was going to pay for a lot of the mooring field. And so I don't think those numbers were in there. Or is there any Beach Life money in the numbers we saw? Here's my question.
Greg, are you able to answer that? Whether did Beach Life actually?
I don't have that information in front of me. You can see a spike from the Beach Life Festival month.
Yeah,
in May.
They would only
19.
Yeah, okay. I thought the only year they were in was 19, and we'll see what happens in 20. But I hope in 22 there's good Beach Life money in there, and maybe we take them all out of hibernation then. Something to think about going forward. One good source of future revenue, I hope, and more advertising for these things. What's the policy on the use of the dock for a dinghy dock, either at the hand launch or at the hoist?
Currently, they're using the boat hoist dock for dinghy docks or the inside of the boat ride dock in Basin 3. Everything's in Basin 3 right now.
Okay. And then one last comment on keeping these things out there. Another reason I like having these mooring buoys out there is that they kind of serve as a feature, a barrier for stand-up paddle boarders. A comment I make over and over again is some way of pushing or giving an attraction on the west side of the harbor to stand-up paddleboarders to get them out of the main traffic lane. Right now it's that delightful sandbar and the concerts and all these other things that we can't stand. But having a row of mooring buoys there, gives you something to paddle through. It gives you something to stay on the other side of. So as you do hibernate these things, you'll probably pick the big ones and the small ones, which ones get used, but you might think about, keeping enough in there to give the stand-up paddleboarders a little bit of guidance on which side of the traffic lane to stay on. So, thanks. I think it's a good idea to, hibernate them temporarily and save some money this year.
Okay, Vicki?
Just a couple of thoughts. We've readdressed many times before when the Harbor Patrol was managing the moorings and after, that one of the reasons that people don't use them that much is because there's no amenities to come here for. There's no permanent place to tie up your dinghy. Now there is on Basin 3. There's no showers. There's no... It's difficult. If you go up, sometimes the gate's locked. You can't get back down to your dinghy. It's not like going to Catalina where there are hot showers. There's place to do your laundry. So that's one of the issues. I'm all for hibernating rather than removing. And my question is, what's going to happen when we dredge?
I don't know that I know the answer to that. I haven't looked at the mooring field versus the profile for the dredging itself. I'd have to look and see if there's any conflict in terms of where we're seeing the deposition of the dredged material versus the mooring field. If we had to, if it was necessary, we may have to, move them temporarily or move a couple of them temporarily for access for dredging operations. But I don't know honestly, Vicki, I don't know the answer to that. I haven't overlaid those two things on top of each other to see if there's any kind of a conflict yet.
Yeah, I think that's something we really need to look at because they're very close proximity to one another.
Mhm.
And, if we hibernate them, they may well end up getting ripped out or covered up.
We'll take a look at that. We'll relay the dredging with mooring.
It doesn't have to be answered now.
Yeah. Well, we'd have to go back and look at the
Right.
the dredging report that was prepared.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, I also don't want to give the grant money back, and I think this is definitely, these moorings are something we should be keeping. I think the real trick, of course, is increasing their utilization because then they would be returning a profit, which would be even better. So to Commissioner Callahan's remarks, absolutely anything we could do to give a reason for these things to be used more. But I was kind of curious, why does anybody identify why suddenly the utilization went up when the marina took over the management?
I think we were just more accessible than the Harbor Patrol, and what I understand, Harbor Patrol was only available Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to take reservations for that particular weekend or reservations out in front of that. So I think we're just more attainable, and this new app we're using, this new booking app, has been very useful as well.
That's my understanding as well, Commissioner Bauer. When we started to look at this transition, one of the things that appealed to us was the fact that Craig has staff there, 7 days a week, morning through afternoon, and so they can, when the reservation number, they're guaranteed to kind of get somebody on the phone and be able to complete the booking. Whereas, and this is not anything negative against the Harbor Patrol, it was just the way the operation was set up initially, was it was on a much more limited basis in terms of making the contact. And so if the person didn't get directly called back, or they weren't notified, perhaps their plans changed and they just ended up not deciding to move forward with coming in and utilizing the mooring field. We've also done more outreach. I think we've done more advertising. We've tried to kind of increase our presence in different locations just to make the boating community aware that the mooring field exists. I think, for a while we had heard that from the Harbor Commission that, sometimes people didn't even know it was there. And so just trying to increase that awareness as well has helped generate some of the additional traffic that we're seeing.
Well, just the website was improved.
Yes, that was improved as well. So we've been trying to make incremental improvements to try to drive, because we agree with you. We think that the real opportunity here is to see if we can just drive more usage and get to a break-even point. That's really where we'd like to get. So, we're always trying to see if there's opportunities for us to do that.
Perfect. Yeah, I think you're on the right track there. So,
thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, Leslie, did you up your hand, or is that a residual?
I had one go back. Did you know which moorings you were going to hibernate?
We were talking about the second and third row of the A moorings going west. So we'll keep the channel row utilized, and then also the ones on the south side of the bait receiver, the larger moorings, the B's and the C's. So 6 on the south side of the bait receiver, and
are you looking at a
potentially
map?
7 on the north side. And that's to be determined as well.
Stephen, you don't have a map or anything, do you?
I don't have a map that's labeled with the A, B's, and C's on it.
It's the ones that are most utilized and the most requested from our users as well.
And you won't. I tried to look at it earlier with Google Maps, and you don't even see it on Google Maps because the tackle's in the water. It's just a blur. So it's. I could try to pull that up if you wanted to, but it's really, really difficult to see in an aerial photo as well.
You're talking the smaller moorings on the north end, right?
Correct.
So Leslie, I don't know if you know the layout, but the smaller boats are further in the harbor and the big ones are nearer to the mouth.
Yeah, so you would hibernate the smaller ones, you said? Closest to the break wall?
Correct.
Well, further north, not west necessarily.
The north side, but yeah. There's 2 rows, I think, closest on that side. I don't know. I'm looking at the Google. It's hard to tell. Okay.
Yeah, it's very hard to tell on them. I looked at that earlier to see if it would be helpful, and it wasn't. So I didn't bother to pull that up. I apologize.
Okay, I don't see any other hands up. I guess, Stephen, you were looking for whether the commission wanted to send something to council saying we concur or had different direction.
Yeah, I think I don't know that the council has and Ted, if you want to weigh in, you can feel free. I don't believe the council has made a particular decision. We were directed to just explore what potential cost savings there might be if we were to remove some of the moorings. And so when we've gone through that process, I think it's Public Works opinion and our opinion. You know, when we look at the numbers, we don't see a real big cost savings if we can reduce our maintenance expenses. I think that's the caveat. If we reduce those expenses, we feel comfortable moving forward with just a recommendation of retaining the existing mooring field. But we wanted you to have an opportunity to weigh in, and if you want to reinforce that recommendation, if you have a different recommendation, please.
So I think there's another aspect that you didn't touch on, but permanently removing those moorings is we would have to evaluate the impact on our LCP, and because it's in the tidelands, would have to go back to the Coastal Commission, where I think hibernating them wouldn't qualify as a project. So I think there's even more impetus not to just blanket remove the things. Because our LCP says we won't reduce any amenities for recreational boating.
I know it says that about slips, and I haven't seen the language that would that also apply.
It's on general recreation too.
Just general recreation?
Yeah, ours is hard to get through because we just stapled stuff together. We never cleaned them up, but if you go through it, that's in there.
Okay.
So Matt, you have your hand up. Do you want to make a motion or?
Do
You're
we
on
need
mute.
public participation?
I know, that's what I'm going to get to. If he has another question, I'll entertain it. If it's a motion, I ask him to hold off until we check off on public participation. You're on mute, Matt.
Sorry, no, I don't have a question. So go ahead with public participation.
So Director Proud, is there any public inputs?
We don't have any attendees for our meeting, so there's no one in our Zoom call to provide public comment. And let me just confirm on our e-comment screen. I will refresh that screen right now. We still are showing 0 comments on our e-comment page as well. So there's no public input on this topic right now. Oh, let me check.
Stephen and Chairperson Light, this is Ted Salon, Public Works Director. Before it goes back to you for a motion, I just want to reiterate what Stephen had mentioned. When the council gave us this direction during the budget times in June, we reached out to the Department of Boating and Waterways to initiate the inquiry about the removal of any of the moors. And as Stephen said, we didn't get a response from them until October. Based on that, we felt it was best to not only write up this report, but actually bring it to you before we report back to the City Council with what our findings are with the Department of Boating and Waterways, and to see if you had any additional input for us.
Yep.
And we've received great input from you, and we'll probably include all of that in our discussions with the council when we bring that forward.
Okay, and I want to say I really appreciate that compared to, what happened with the dredging. I think this is the way things should work. Before we go back to council or out to some external agency that the Harbor Commission at least understands and has a chance to weigh in. So really appreciate that, Ted.
Right.
With that, Matt, I think you wanted to make a motion, if I understood you correctly.
Yes, sir. So I'd like to make the motion that the Harbor Commission recommend to the City Council not to remove permanently any of the moorings not to basically be in a position to have to refund money to the Department of Boating and Waterways, and to let staff determine how many moorings to hibernate in any given quarter to reduce our quarterly, or to reduce the maintenance expenses.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion before we vote? Okay, I think this one, let's, if you don't mind, Director Proud, if we could take a roll call vote since it's going to council.
Sure, my pleasure. And you've all moved around in my video screen now. So I'll take you in the order you're now on my screen, which is Commissioner Kilroy,
Yes.
Commissioner Bauer,
Yes.
Commissioner Callahan,
Yes.
Commissioner Krazan,
Yes.
Commissioner Carlson.
Yes, and I'm sorry, I missed my opportunity to comment. I was too slow on the mute button, but Craig, the ones you said that would be pulled out, those look like, good ones for stand-up paddleboarding. I think that'll still give you a nice barrier. So that plan looks good to me. So thank you.
And Chair Light.
Concur. And I think we need a motion, so that carries. Do we need to do anything for you, Stephen, or do you have that?
I think if I heard Ted correctly, he's kind of gotten the feedback, and we can take that recommendation and fold it into the staff report that we present to the city council. Let them know that we met, we discussed the item with you, and that your recommendation was not to remove any of the moorings from the mooring fields and to hibernate them, so that would prevent us from having to return any of the grant funding. So we can incorporate that into our staff report. I don't think you need to send a separate letter or recommendation.
Yeah, and to adjust them on a quarterly basis. So it kind of gives you the carte blanche going forward. Do we need a motion to receive and file the reports?
Probably not a bad idea. You could do that one without objection.
Motion to receive and file.
I saw you mouth that, Vicky.
Okay, second.
Okay, any dissensions from that? Okay. So now we go to director's report.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you,
All
Commissioners.
right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ted.
Took me forever figure out how to stop sharing the screen. I finally figured it out. It was on my other monitor as opposed to this monitor. So
We saw Elizabeth was helping you out.
yeah, she was. I need all the help I can get. Okay, so director's report. I will take you through this. As I always do, I always start out with things that have gone to the city council in the past. And I'll just take these in the order they went. On October 20th, on the consent calendar, we had some consents to amendments for subleases for the Redondo Beach Landing leasehold, small, mostly extension of terms for subtenants. And then there was a discussion item that was related to the skate park at Pad 10. I will tell you that there is a meeting tomorrow, so I'll know more about that. The direction was just to continue to move forward with evaluating that site. We have a meeting tomorrow internal, and we'll know more about what direction we're taking, and I can report that out to you at our next meeting. We had the strategic plan meeting was on October 29th. There was some discussion at that meeting regarding the fact that there was a sense that there wasn't any of the items that the Harbor Commission had recommended included in the strategic plan. And I think as part of that conversation, the topic came up about the public amenities plan. And while not on the strategic plan, it was an item that was a referral from the council. And so there was a sense that since that item was referred, they didn't put anything else onto the strategic plan that was directly related to the harbor itself. Also at that meeting, there was some ongoing discussion regarding the pallet shelter program, the temporary housing for homeless individuals in our community. The reason that was on the agenda for the 29th was that the current owner of the C-Lab site had reached out to the city and offered the C-Lab site as a possible location for the temporary housing. Ultimately, I don't know if Ted is still still here. Ted and I and Mike Klein, we went out there, we looked at the site. Just really wasn't suitable for that particular use. The C Lab had all kinds of channels that had been cut for water distribution. They had vaults and tanks and really kind of an unsafe situation. So with that, the city council went ahead and moved forward with the Kingsdale site for the pallet shelter housing project. At the beginning of November, we took our annual free holiday parking for the Pier Garage, which was approved by the city council. We've already worked our way through that window. It was December 5th through Friday, January 1st. And then on the 17th of November was the annual report from the Redondo Beach Tourism Management District. They're obligated under their bylaws that created them to present an annual report to the city council on their activities for the revenues that they collect and the marketing efforts that they undertake to try to increase occupancy and tourism in the city of Redondo Beach. Obviously, it's been an extremely challenging year with COVID. They've ended up with half of the revenues that they projected they were going to have. And so a lot of their energy has been focused on how they're going to start to message Redondo Beach as a tourist destination as we start to come out of COVID, hopefully sooner rather than later. So that's really where the focus of their energy is. But they provided their annual report to the city council that evening. We also then had a small consent to sublease for a property on Pier Plaza. And then we did an amendment for architectural mailboxes, also a Pier Plaza tenant on the 1st of December. Upcoming city council items, you all may be very aware, if not, you'll be aware now that we are going to have a conversation with the city council tomorrow night regarding the public amenities master plan. And you may recall this item was a referral from Councilmember Nierenheim to us, but obviously it reflects a lot of the input that you've continued to provide the council in every strategic plan letter that you've written. I think the last 3 strategic plan letters have included something that looks like a public amenities master plan ought to be included in the strategic plan. So we did get that referral from Councilmember Nierenheim. So will be that they direct us to come to you, the Harbor Commission, to develop a scope of work for that public amenities master plan that would then be incorporated into a request for proposals that would then go out to the various vendors who would be qualified to respond. I did some initial outreach on this in preparation for the city council discussion. And interestingly, I had a conversation with 2 different vendors. I had a conversation with what would be a more traditional land planning, landscape architecture type firm. And they were very candid and said, look, we might be able to provide some input on this, but who we really think you ought to be looking to is marine engineering firms, that because of the nature of what you're going to be doing, that they might want to be the prime. You may still need somebody like a landscape architect to talk about some of the park elements and some of the landside type of improvements, but that perhaps the lead on this should be a marine engineering firm. I took that opportunity to call Moffitt and Nickel, who's been working with the city on, you may recall, on the sport fishing pier before we put that on pause, and talk to them about the prospective project. And in both instances, what I was really trying to get a feel for was, a little bit about scope of work, but more, what do you think in terms of a fee? Sometimes those things are really hard to try to ballpark in terms of what you think a fee might be. And in our staff report tomorrow night, both of them actually came in just kind of on a, stick your finger in the air kind of guess at roughly somewhere between $200,000 to $250,000. And so that's in our staff report to city council tomorrow night. So really what we're looking for the city council to do tomorrow night is, because it was a single referral from a council member and it wasn't part of we weren't anticipating doing this as part of our 2021 work plan in waterfront and economic development. And consequently, because it was a tight budget year, we didn't allocate any funding for this work effort. our real question for the city council tomorrow night is do you want us to do this at all? If they give us a green light, we think we can secure the funding for it from 2 capital improvement projects that we currently are working on. One is the sport fishing pier project. Makes perfect sense since that's part of one of the amenities that we'll be talking about as part of the public amenities plan, to repurpose that money in that capital improvement account. And then the second is we were looking at doing some design work on the Basin 3 seawalls. We expect that would be part of the public amenities plan as well. So it would basically be to take some of the money that's currently sitting in those 2 capital improvement projects and repurpose that funding for use to prepare the public amenities master plan. Those 2 together, off the top of my head, I want to say was $290,000 in funding that's available that could be used for this particular purpose. And so hopefully the council will give us that direction. If they do, this will be on your agenda for your next meeting to have a conversation about what this scope of work should include. Obviously, it can be large, it can be small. I think we want to be strategic and figure out what your priorities are in terms of putting this plan together, and then take that back to the city council with a fleshed out request for proposals and ask them to allow us to go ahead and issue that out for a response from vendors. I've probably said more than I should say in a director's report on that topic, but just wanted to let you know, I basically just gave you the whole staff report for tomorrow night. And so you have a sense of what we're going to talk about with them, but the real meat of this thing will be when we come back to talk to you about what should be in there. We did give some examples to the city council. We said, hey, you might want to think about these things, but questions like, well, do we go from Portofino Way down to the end of International Boardwalk? Do we include Moonstone Park? Are there other pieces of the harbor that should be included and looked at? That scope is going to be really critical in terms of how this thing comes together and the interrelationship of all these different improvements and amenities. So that will be your main topic when we get back together in about a month from now. I'll come back to that and grab some questions. Let me finish up the director's report. The only other thing that we currently have calendared for upcoming city council would be on the 19th of January. We have a lease for the cancer support community. They're a tenant up on Pier Plaza. And then we have a contract amendment for Cosmon Associates. We do have a couple of other lease amendments coming up on a to be determined date. Don't know when those will be. So that's city council action. Then just on miscellaneous follow-up items, a lot of our time recently has been taken up with the on again, off again changing COVID restrictions, particularly as they relate to dining establishments and what the establishments at the pier can and can't do, and how does that ultimately impact them from an economic perspective. As most of you know, and we've talked about before, we have been allowing for rent deferrals. Our game plan initially was to allow those rent deferrals to occur, and prior to this most recent closing, we were negotiating with the various tenants to start a payback program in January and have that payback program last 12 or 18 months. It will be interesting for us to see. We haven't gotten our December rent payments sorted out yet. They have until the 10th, which was just yesterday, to make their rent payments. So it'll be interesting for us to see who is still paying rent and who is now going to reapproach us for a deferral and perhaps an adjustment to their rent repayment schedules. So it's really a challenge. If it wasn't difficult enough for our restaurants being winter, having it be daylight savings time, it's equally now more challenging to not even have the availability of outdoor dining for them. So most of them are still trying to do some amount of pickup, takeout, delivery, but it's really been challenging. We found that to be the case early on in the pandemic. They did a little better when we were able to provide the outdoor seating areas, but now that they've been forced to close those and go back to the takeout and delivery model, I know they are all struggling with that that business model. Okay, then other things, we do have the Harbor Patrol docks, which you spent a lot of time looking at. Those are moving forward. We're actually in the process of reviewing 60% plans to move that forward. The Coastal Commission processed that project under a de minimis permit, so there wasn't a very extensive review on their part. And so we're moving forward with 60% plans. You all know that the hand launch is out of the water right now. It was removed on the 16th of November. People can launch from the Redondo Beach Marina near the hoist structure. So if anyone asks, that's the location where we are doing hand launch for watercraft there. Interesting, recently we've had 2 of the hotels in the harbor reflag their properties. The Crown Plaza Hotel has reflagged itself to a brand name called Sonesta. So they are Sonesta Redondo Beach. That became effective December 1st. It's the same owners, it's just a management company change. And then the Redondo Hotel, they're going to keep the name Redondo Hotel, but it's now going to be part of what's called the Tapestry Collection by Hilton. And that just became effective right after the first of the year on January 6th. And the only requirement for them is to add a full service restaurant and bar to meet that Hilton standard. So I think that's good news that they're, the hotels here are rebranding themselves. I think it's a really good news for the Redondo Hotel to now be under the Hilton family of hotels. Hopefully that'll help with their occupancy as we start to come out of the COVID crisis. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention was dredging. We know that the comments were submitted, and we talked earlier that there's still a letter due to the city council, and we'll put that on the February agenda. We did get back, and I wasn't entirely sure that this was how the process was going to work. So the Army Corps of Engineers put out that comment notice. They received comments from various parties, including yourselves. And I don't know why I thought this, but I guess I thought that it was going to be the Army Corps of Engineers that would be responding to those comments. But in fact, what they do is they treat it a little bit like an EIR. So you've prepared the application, they collected the comments, but then they give the comments back to you for you to respond to the comments, and then those get rolled into the permit. So it's a little circular in that regard. We just got the comments back. We had a meeting on Friday. So we haven't even really had a chance to prepare them, but the response to comments are due back by January 27th. So it's a very quick kind of 2-week turnaround. We may be asking them for an extension on that. It's really kind of up to our public works folks if they think they can get their responses prepared and responded back. Not surprisingly, the quick look at the comments are all of the things that you were concerned about at your meeting: placement of dredge material, habitat concerns, particularly related to the sea bass, the debris in the dredge materials, not having a repeat of what happened when the harbor was last dredged and when it was done, when the Marina Del Rey material was deposited here. So there are some comments along those lines that are in there that need to be responded to. So we'll be working on a response to comments. And like I said, as of right now, we have to return that back to them in the next couple of weeks. So I know they've been forwarded on to the consultant team. As I said, they haven't drafted their responses yet, so I can't comment on what those responses would be. And I think that was the last thing I have. And then obviously our next Harbor Commission meeting is on February 8th next month. So it's the second Monday of the month in February. So I think with that covers most of everything I wanted to talk about on the director's report. I'm happy to take any questions you have. I'm sure you have some.
Okay, thank you. Matt? Did we lose Matt?
I don't see Matt on my screen anymore. Oh, yeah.
No, you didn't lose me. I am here. Sorry.
Nope, you're here.
Nope, I'm good.
You have your hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I never put it down from before.
Okay, Roger?
Yeah, Director, thanks for the report. And I'm glad you're not making us answer our own questions.
Yeah.
I concur with our clerk.
I have to tell you, I thought about that for a long time. I thought, really, this is sort of a strange, like, you wrote the comments, you got to respond. So
I expected it would happen this way, and I regret we didn't do this a year ago. But enough of that. I know it's early in the year, and it may be very late in 2020, depending on how you're counting the calendar. Do you know yet if there's any big events this year, like, Beach Life Festival? The first one I was thinking of is Kite Festival, which is only 2 months away.
yeah, we just had this conversation at the Pier Association. So we're going to postpone Kite Festival. Looks like we're probably going to look for dates. We don't have a new date set. We're thinking maybe in September-ish, kind of in the fall. The Pier Association is not undertaking any events. I can't think of anything that we would be doing in the first 4 months of this year. So at least through the end of April. The Pier Association has tried to, wait as long as possible before they ultimately cancel an event. So we were getting to the point on the Kite Festival where we had to make a decision as to whether we thought we could move forward with that or not. And so a quick email around to the group, and everybody said, yeah, we don't really think that's going to work in March. We probably need to postpone that. So, I think the next really big decision we're going to have to make, and I'm really hopeful that we've, seen some progress on the coronavirus, the vaccines, the caseloads, are the summer concert series. I mean, that starts to become the next thing that we start to think about in July. Now that's 6 months away, so we won't make that decision probably for another 2 or 3 months, but we do have to start booking talent and doing the kinds of things that we need to do to get ready for that. So, but yeah, we don't have anything in the first quarter of the year that I'm aware of. Beyond that, I think people are taking a little bit of a wait and see attitude.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm afraid that's the right answer on the Kite Festival, and
Yeah,
I even actually have a kite this year. So, my other comment to you is just a suggestion for the Pier restaurant group. You might consider car service. I've done this in other venues, and I think there's, parking space within the pier, especially in the parking lot up above near Kincaid's that has a nice view, where, a runner coming from a restaurant and not just Kincaid's could bring food out to cars. Just one more option to keep those places going. Mm-hmm. Take a look at that parking lot. It's a nice place to park and eat lunch. I've done it.
Oh, it's beautiful up top.
Yeah. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck to everybody on the pier.
Okay, I don't see it. Oh, Vicky.
Actually, my hand was up for member items and referrals to staff. Sorry.
Okay. Well, I think we can close out the director's report then, unless you had any seconds, Stephen.
No, I think that's it. Just a motion to receive and file.
Motion to receive and file.
Second.
Okay, anybody opposed? Okay, so ordered. Let's go to director's report. Vicky.
My early bird gets the worm. Director Proud, we had talked about having a vacancy report every so often. If It wouldn't be too much trouble to get that together for February if we don't have a real long agenda. And the other one is to make sure that we look into the dredging overlay of the moorings.
Yeah, we will definitely do that.
Great. And that's all I had. Thank you so much.
And I think we could do vacancy report in February. I'll look to the chair and the vice chair. You do have your scope of work discussion for the public amenities master plan if you feel comfortable putting both of those on. The vacancy report is pretty straightforward because
it's pretty quick. Yeah.
So we can do that.
Okay, Commissioner Bauer.
Nothing for me.
Commissioner Carlson.
Nothing else. Thanks.
Commissioner Kruzan,
Nothing.
and Commissioner Kilroy.
I'm good. Thank you. Apologize for the earlier. I lost my cursor. That's why I couldn't unmute myself. I know it sounds
We
silly.
kind of liked it that way, but
That's okay, Matt. My share screen was on a completely different monitor and I couldn't figure out how to get back. So,
okay. So the
we're
only
operating in a new world.
the only open items that, and we've said it twice, the agendizing the dredging letter to the council for next time. And I would appreciate, an update on the skate park. You already kind of committed to that, and then where we're at on lawsuits, to the extent you can talk about them with both Center Cal and I think we sued the water board at the AES site. And those don't have to be agenda items, just if you can cover that in your report next time. So the only thing I picked up as the agenda items, the dredging letter to the council.
Got it. And I had that from my earlier notes, so we will add that on.
Okay, any seconds? Okay, so with that, let's see, what are we adjourning to? Do we know?
February 8th, isn't it?
February.
Well, are we going to have one in February?
Yes.
Yes, we should. I think we will, given the other items that you've added here. If for some reason the city council tomorrow night decides not to go forward with the public amenities master plan, then it'll just be a little bit of a lighter agenda, but we'll still bring the vacancy report. We'll still bring to the letter to the council on the dredging. So we will have those two on there, but I think they'll probably,
Okay, so we'll adjourn to February 8th. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Thank
Good
you.
evening.
Good night.
Appreciate
Thanks.
the conversation and participation amongst the team here.
Yeah.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good
Thank you.
night.
Good night, everyone.
Happy New Year.